On August 5th in 1858, after several unsuccessful attempts, the first telegraph line across the Atlantic Ocean is completed, a feat accomplished largely through the efforts of American merchant Cyrus West Field. The telegraph was first developed by Samuel F. Morse, who was an artist turned inventor. He conceived the idea of the electric telegraph in the year 1832. Several European inventors had proposed such a device, but Morse worked independently and by the mid-1830s had built a working telegraph instrument. In the late 1830s, he perfected Morse code, a set of signals that could represent language in telegraph messages. In May 1844, Morse inaugurated the world's first commercial telegraph line with the message, quote, "What God hath wrought," unquote, sent from the U.S. Capitol to a railroad station in Baltimore. Within a decade, more than 20,000 miles of telegraph cable crisscrossed the country. The rapid communication it made possible greatly aided American expansion, making railroad travel safer as it provided a boost to business conducted across the great distances of a growing United States. In 1854, Cyrus West Field conceived the idea of the telegraph cable and secured a charter to lay a well-insulated line across the floor of the Atlantic Ocean. Obtaining the aid of British and American naval ships, he made 4 unsuccessful attempts, beginning in 1857. In July of 1858, 4 British and American vessels, the Agamemnon, the Valorous, the Niagara, and the Gorgon, met in mid-ocean for the 5th attempt. On July 29th, the Niagara and the Gorgon, with their load of cable, departed for Trinity Bay, Newfoundland, while the Agamemnon and the Valorous embarked for Valentia, Ireland. By August 5th, the cable had been successfully laid, stretching nearly 2,000 miles across the Atlantic. On August 16th, the 15th President, James Buchanan, and Queen Victoria exchanged formal introductory and complimentary messages. Unfortunately, the cable proved weak and the current insufficient, and by the beginning of September had ceased functioning. Field later raised new funds and made new arrangements. In 1866, the British ship Great Eastern succeeded in laying the first permanent telegraph line across the Atlantic Ocean. Cyrus West Field was the object of much praise on both sides of the Atlantic for his persistence in accomplishing what many thought to be an impossible undertaking. And he later promoted other oceanic cables, including telegraph lines that stretched from Hawaii to Asia and Australia. On August 5th in 1861, our nation's 16th president, Abraham Lincoln, imposes our nation's first federal income tax by signing the Revenue Act. Strapped for cash with which to purchase the Civil War, Lincoln and Congress agreed to impose a 3% tax on annual incomes over $800. As early as March 1861, Lincoln had begun to take stock of the federal government's ability to wage war against the South. He sent letters to cabinet members Edward Bates, Gideon Welles, and Salmon Chase requesting their opinions as to whether or not the president had the constitutional authority to collect such duties. According to documents, housed and interpreted by the Library of Congress, Lincoln was particularly concerned about maintaining a federal authority over collecting revenue from ports along the southeastern seaboard, which he worried might fall under the control of the Confederacy. The Revenue Act's language was broadly written to define income as gain, quote, derived from any kind of property or from any professional trade, employment, or vocation carried on in the United States or elsewhere or from any source, whatever, unquote. According to the U.S. Treasury Department, the comparable minimum taxable income in 2003 after adjustments for inflation would have been approximately $16,000. But in 1909, Congress also passed the 16th Amendment, which set in place the federal income tax system that our nation uses. Congress ratified the 16th Amendment in 1913. On August 5th in 1944, Polish insurgents liberate a German forced labor camp in Warsaw, freeing 348 Jewish prisoners who joined in a general uprising against the German occupiers of the city. As the Red Army advanced on Warsaw in July of that year, Polish patriots, still loyal to their government in exile back in London, prepared to overthrow the German occupation. On July 29th, the Polish Home Army, underground, the People's Army, a communist guerrilla movement, and armed civilians took back 2/3 of Warsaw from the Germans. On August 4th, the Germans counterattacked, mowing down Polish civilians with machine gun fire. By August 5th, more than 15,000 Poles were dead. The Polish command cried to the Allies for help. Churchill telegraphed Stalin, informing him that the British intended to drop ammunition and other supplies into the southwest quarter of Warsaw to aid the insurgents. The Prime Minister asked Stalin to aid in the insurgents' cause. Stalin balked, claiming the insurgency was too insignificant to waste time with. Britain succeeded in their mission of getting some aid to the Polish patriots, but the Germans also succeeded by dropping some incendiary bombs. The Poles fought on, and on August 5th, they freed Jewish forced laborers, who then joined in the battle, some of whom formed a special platoon dedicated solely to repairing captured German tanks for use in the struggle. The Poles would battle on for weeks against German reinforcements and without Soviet help, as Joseph Stalin had his own plans for Poland.